She eventually made it in finance here in the United States. She became a vice president at Goldman Sachs. She recently wrote a piece accusing the Trump administration of creating a deportation force that will drive out millions of immigrants. She joins us now. Julissa, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So you applied for a job and were accepted at Goldman Sachs and ascended in the ranks, but you were here illegally. That suggests that you used an illegal Social Security number, someone else's, a stolen Social Security number. Whose was it?
I did. I used a fake Social Security number that didn't belong to anyone. It was a completely made-up number. And, unfortunately, that is what young people who are incredibly driven are forced to do, given the immigration policies that we currently have. I was very fortunate to be able to become an American citizen eventually when I got married to a U.S. citizen. But for millions of people, this line that we continually talk about doesn't actually exist. There isn't a pathway for people to get documented, including the young man that you just mentioned that was deported recently.
But you said you were forced to do it. My understanding is that's a felony punishable by 5 to 10 years in prison. Do you have any regrets for committing a felony to take a job?
So it actually, the felony conviction you're talking about really depends on what state, and I did not commit identity theft. As I said, the social that I used was completely fake. I absolutely wish that I didn't have to do that. I wish that there had been a pathway for me to become a permanent resident and eventually a citizen. I came here when I was 11 years old, and so I absolutely wish that there had been another way. But given the circumstances that I was in, that really was my only choice and my only option. And I did the best that I could with the circumstances that I had. And as you said, I became a vice president at Goldman Sachs and later became a director at Merrill Lynch.
Right. So you had no choice but to work at Goldman Sachs. I guess it sounds to me like, and congratulations on your success in this country, I think you'd be a little more grateful for the opportunities the country offered you. It sounds like you're blaming the country for laws that you don't like. You're saying with a straight face you had to violate our laws because they were unjust laws. Why did you have to violate our laws?
No, I think what I'm saying is that there are laws that are unjust, but I'm not blaming anybody for the circumstances that I was in. I'm incredibly grateful to this country, which is why I became an American citizen. And that was one of the best days of my life, to finally be recognized by a country that I have called home since I was 11 years old. So I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity. And so now what I'm doing is trying to make that opportunity available to more people who come here to work really hard and to give of their talents to make this country the country that it is, a great, beautiful country, which is why I live here and I'm an American citizen now.
Right. And again, it's worked out great for you, as it does for a lot of immigrants. And I admire their work ethic and their drive. And I also sympathize with them wanting to leave the countries a lot of them are fleeing from. But I also think Americans ought to have a voice in this. And I also found your characterization, frankly, of the president's proposed border wall as, quote, a symbol of hate, as not an indication of gratitude. It suggests that you don't think America has a right to protect its borders. And that seems a very odd attitude for someone who's benefited so much from your adopted country.
No, not at all. I don't think that makes me ungrateful. I think that makes me a citizen of the country who also gets to have a voice. And my voice might be different than your voice, but we both get to voice our opinions.
But I'm not. Of course, I'm not challenging your right to say what you think, and I would defend it literally. However, I don't understand why a country's desire to protect its border is an expression of hate.
Well,
what does that mean?
I think that the point that I'm trying to make is that the wall is not the best way to protect our borders. Listen, I live here. I want this country to be safe. My children are going to grow up in America as American citizens born here. And so I absolutely want our country to be safe. But building a wall that is going to cost, by the way, billions of dollars of American taxpayers, my tax dollars are going to go.
I'm sorry.
You know
what? I don't have any patience for that argument because I don't think it's.
That isn't going to protect us.
Okay.
How is a wall going to protect us?
So you're saying it's too expensive. You're saying the wall is too expensive, but that's not actually what you said. You said it's an expression of hate, and I just want to get to the bottom of that. Why is it hateful to want to build a wall? A lot of Americans do, the majority in some surveys. Why is that related to hate?
It is a hateful symbol. It is a symbol of hate against immigrants. It is a symbol of hate against Mexican immigrants, which the president, the Mr. Trump. Ran his campaign on. So I do still view the.
But why is it a symbol of? Hold on. Why is it? I just want to get to the bottom of this because you're throwing around language that has an effect on people's attitudes, and it's pretty heavy duty because it presumes motives that you can't know. You don't know that people who support the wall hate Mexican immigrants. A lot of people coming across the border are not from Mexico, as you know. They're Central Americans. Is it legitimate? Is it morally legitimate for an American to say, I want control of who comes into my country? And we don't have that, and so a wall will reestablish that control. For you to denounce that as hate seems a little much.
And I would absolutely welcome a conversation about how do we create a system by which people can come here legally that will benefit Americans, that will increase tax revenue, that will increase economic activity. So we should have that conversation.
We're having that conversation now, and you're not answering with respect. You're not answering my question. You're not answering the key question here. But let's get to another question.
I am answering the question. The question is
why is it a symbol of hate for people to disagree with you on the wall?
As a Mexican immigrant, I can have an opinion that wall to me symbolizes a symbol.
I'm merely asking you to explain your opinion. I'm not challenging your right to have one. I think you have a right to have any opinion you want. But I think I have a right to ask you what you're talking about, and you can't explain it. So let's move on to the next question, which is really simple. How many people should we allow into this country illegally every year? Let's be precise, since you do this for a living. How many people should we allow in illegally every year?
I don't think that we should allow people illegally into the country. I think that we should create a pathway so that people can come into the country legally. I never had to cross the border illegally. I came here on a tourist visa. So I don't know what it's like to risk your life to come here. But many people do die trying to come to our country. And so I want to have a way so that people who want to come work in this country can come work in this country legally. Okay, how many? There are 320 million people in the country. Again, you do this for a living. This is not something that you haven't thought about, presumably. Yeah. How many people should we let in every year? We let in about 1.5 million legally. What should that number be? And we're interested in the answer. I certainly am. What is it? Yeah, I think that we have to have a deeper conversation to come up with a number that makes sense. But, the number right now, for example, when we talk about high-skilled worker visas, HB1 visas, we only have 85,000 visas that we give out every year through a lottery. And that number hasn't changed in decades. Right? We haven't looked at our immigration system, both the legal immigration system and how do we create a pathway to citizenship for the people here undocumented.
Look, I'm trying to be respectful, and I do respect your achievements, and I think you're clearly a talented person. But I think if you advocate for policy changes, you ought to be able to define what they are and then defend them. And you can't. And many other people in your position can't. And I just want specifics. That's it. I'm not trying to be mean, but you can't provide them, and I'm disappointed. I'm sorry, we're out of time.
I can provide you with the specifics.
Yeah, I've asked you 5 times. Like, what's the number? And we'll just hold it real quickly. How many people should we let in every year? Yeah, what's the ideal number of legal immigrants, either through H-1B programs or through various other programs, to bring people illegally? How many should we bring in a year? That's a real question.
That cap of 85,000 visas should at least be double to that number to meet the demands of our country and of our economy. Okay. So if you're talking about HB1 visas, I think the number should at the very least be doubled. And when it comes to policy, we can't have a conversation about changing the immigration policies of this country without including a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million people who are here.
Maybe we can. That's kind of up to American citizens and not up to people here illegally.
It's up as an American citizen.
Right, as an American. I get it. Thank you for throwing out that number. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, for the modern left, the concept